the podcast, we always talk about saying hello, the power of friendships. Through my story started with talking to dads at the park. But today I want to go into a different area. Today I want to talk about why it might not work. Because there is a world out there, you've been listening to this podcast for a while, thinking about applying all these different things, but having this thought in your head that says, that's not me. Guys like me, they don't do things like that, which was a common thing that I told myself over and over and over again, which is why I'm taking a guess you might be saying it with all the different things that this podcast suggests you apply in your life and the different ideas and the ways of thinking to get better results in your life. But why is that? Why it might not work? Why is that a thought that we're working through? It has to do with stringing together a couple different episodes. We've talked about shadows on this podcast, the things we don't talk about. We've talked about your ego on this podcast. We've dove into a whole bunch of different areas that were kind of dark to get to illuminate a lot of that energy. Because here's what I want to thread and kind of reveal into this idea of guys like me don't do things like that. It's because we haven't acknowledged. It's because you probably did the same thing to all the episodes as those episodes. You heard it. You listened, you felt like it was a good piece of advice, but you didn't apply it. It might not work is because we aren't moving through what we're acknowledging. We aren't moving through what we're illuminating. We aren't moving through where we're meant to go. Guys, what I'm talking about here is that we need to acknowledge the growth we need to happen, that we need to go through, we need to grow through. Knowing this podcast exists, listening to it every day is not enough. Applying it is key. Acknowledging that you're stuck in knowledge mode is important because in 2021, we do not have a knowledge problem. We have an application problem. We have an application problem because people are often afraid to engage. We're afraid to engage because what if we engage and they actually see who I see? We've done episodes about talking about the man in the mirror as well. And when you look in the mirror, there's a version of yourself that you see. And often the reason why it might not work is because you're afraid that when you do engage with the world, you do try to implement some of these things, you're afraid that they might see who you see. You're afraid that the BS you tell yourself might actually be validated, and that's really scary. So I would rather just not know whether it's true or false and stay stuck. I'm telling you, over 7 years of growth, had I applied in the very beginning what I was learning, I would be much farther on my journey than I am today. I can see it plain as day for when I look back and see different moments where I had chances to engage with life but didn't, change my opportunity that I had in front of me to create new roads where ones didn't exist, was directly reflective of guys like me don't do that, so I'm just going to stay back here. That's a good idea. That's a good book. That's a great podcast episode. That's him. That's not me. You don't know me, is something I would tell myself all the time. So it might not work is because you're not acknowledging the unacknowledged. And if you have acknowledged it, you need to move through it. Today, I want to make it your call to action. Move through something. It doesn't have to be the big things, the big elephants. Find the small things that you could acknowledge and move through. And find out what's on the other side. Because the more something scares you, the more something's beautiful on the other side. We had an episode dedicated to fear a while back. Use fear to know where you need to move through. Let that guide you, and you will get to better places. And I'll be back again with you guys tomorrow.